welcome to Chapter 13 for Introduction to Economics. I'm going to be using a couple of videos that I use in my Principles of Economics macro class. They start with inflation. That's like their 5th chapter. And so I'm going to be using some of these videos. So the first video here is going to cover and define inflation. Inflation is just a general rise in the price level over time. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Our measurement for inflation is the Consumer Price Index. So in this first video, what I'm going to do is share with you the Consumer Price Index. And then we're going to talk about in the second video, how the Consumer Price Index, what are some of the problems with it. So I hope you enjoy it and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. And what we're going to look at here is what actually is contained on that shopping list that the CPI uses. And there's some extra information in here if you're welcome to look at it. And that's fine. So let me go ahead and hit share. Okay. So we're going to talk about what's included in the CPI's basket. So there's a lot of information here. Basically, this is how the Bureau of Economic Analysis comes up with the Consumer Price Index, okay? And you're more than welcome to click on the hyperlink, which will take you, to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, not Bureau of Economic Analysis. And if you go ahead and click on that hyperlink, and that'll take you to several pages. It's about this thick, and I usually share it with students. Here's just a big, broad overview. And so here's the typical basket, and it kind of makes sense if you think about what people spend their money on. So housing, rent, okay, or imputed value, mortgages, and so on. Food and beverages and transportation tend to be the three biggest. This one was updated, I believe this is 2020, so kind of gives you a good idea again, of the relative importance. This is one reason why we strip out food and energy from this, and energy would be included somewhat in transportation, oil costs, and so on. But kind of gives you a good, big, broad overview. And again, if you're interested in it, please do think about going to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it has everything you could ever want to know about the Consumer Price Index. Moreover, it has the Consumer Price Index for regions, and it has the Consumer Price Index for your local area, your county, and so on. So you can boil down to very finite in this if you would so desire. Thanks for your time. Okay, now that we've kind of looked at the Consumer Price Index and what it includes, we're going to talk about some of those problems with the Consumer Price Index. So I hope you enjoy this next video. Thanks. We're going to take a look at the cost of living and some of the problems with using the Consumer Price Index as the cost of living. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you. Go ahead and start this. Come on. Okay, so we're going to take a look at 3 problems of the Consumer Price Index and actually what the impact is if, and they tend to overstate the Consumer Price Index. The first one is substitution bias, and we can look at this using a problem that we started in Learning Objective 2. But because some prices increase faster than others, then we will tend to substitute more cheap goods for more expensive ones. And this is difficult because we use a fixed basket, so we don't change the basket based upon the types of goods which they are in. So here's an example. Here's the price of beef. It goes from $4 in 2014 to $9 in 2016. Price of chicken goes from $4 to $6, and then the cost of the basket increases proportionately. So in this particular one, let's see, let me grab my pen. Okay, so obviously beef is really increasing a lot between 2015 and 2016. Chicken is not increasing as greatly. So the question is, in 2016, if you're faced with beef at $9 a pound, chicken at $6 a pound, you're going to increase the quantity of chicken that you buy, and you're going to decrease the quantity of beef that you buy. Because of that, we call this the substitution bias. So in our previous example, we looked at this and we calculated that the cost of the 2016 basket was $195. Again, the quantity times the price. And then what was the cost of the household basket in 2015 to 2016? So the rate of increase would be 30%. The consumer price index from the previous problem was 40%. So remember that we're relying on the consumer price index. So one of the problems because of the substitution bias is the CPI tends to overstate the rate of inflation because it doesn't account for the fact that people will trade more cheaper goods for more expensive ones. Another is the introduction of new goods. So when you have new goods that come into the market, then many people trade off the older types of goods. And so their dollars do become more valuable to them because they're getting a greater quality effect. And this is sometimes difficult to measure the way we look at um, economic thought, but not so much if we continue on into later economic classes. So again, this too, the second problem, the introduction of new goods, tends to overstate the consumer price index. The last one is unmeasured quality change. And by unmeasured quality change, we mean things like new and improved. Maybe you use less laundry detergent than you used to have to be able to, or used to have to use, and you get the same result or even better results. Basically, this too increases the value of the dollar. And again, it's sometimes difficult for us to measure that, but this too overstates the consumer price index. So the three factors, substitution bias, unmeasured quality change, and introduction of new goods, all tend to overstate the consumer price index about 0.5% per year. And we make adjustments for that, knowing that. And again, remember that those things index to inflation, that's what we called it, linked to inflation. We have to take into account the overstating of inflation because of these three problems.